The control room of Reactor 7 at the Westridge Nuclear Facility had never been designed for silence. For 37 years, it hummed with cooling pumps and ventilation systems. But on this November morning, the silence was different. It was the silence of held breath, of engineers staring at screens they couldn't believe. Core temperature is 1,847 degrees and climbing, announced Sarah Chen, the lead operator. We're 12 minutes from critical threshold. Director Marcus Webb gripped the back of her chair, knuckles white. 23 years running this facility without incident. All of that was about to end in a radioactive plume that would make Chernobyl look like a dress rehearsal. Emergency coolant system, he asked, knowing the answer. Failed. Primary and secondary loops. Pumps are running but nothing's flowing. It's like the pipes are blocked. Around the room, operators worked frantically. Through reinforced windows, Webb could see the reactor building, an innocent concrete dome hiding the chaos inside. 11 minutes, Chen said. Has anyone called Elaine Hoffner? Martinez, a young engineer, asked. The room went quiet. Everyone knew the name. The ghost of Westridge. Chief technician for 26 years before retiring 5 years ago. Legend said she could diagnose problems by sound alone. She won't come, Webb said. She's done with nuclear power. 9 minutes. Webb pulled out his phone, hands shaking. She answered on the 4th ring. This better be good, Marcus. Reactor 7. Core temp approaching critical. Coolant system failure. Pause. How long? 8 minutes. Put me on speaker. Get someone with a thermal camera to coolant junction B7. Now. The next 6 minutes were chaos. Elaine barked questions faster than they could answer. When her face appeared on the main screen, older, weathered, but sharp-eyed, she was already in her car. 7 minutes, Chen whispered. I know exactly what's wrong, Elaine said. Show me junction B7 thermal image. The image showed coolant pipes in orange and red, except one section glowing bright yellow. There. Thermal bloom. There's a pocket of superheated water trapped in the junction, preventing fresh coolant from reaching the core. How do we clear it? Webb asked. We do something incredibly stupid. We reverse the pumps. You can't reverse the pumps. Foster stood up. That's forbidden in every safety protocol. The pipes can handle 30 seconds. The bubble will collapse, coolant will flood through, temperature drops. And if you're wrong? Elaine's eyes showed fear for the first time. Then we've got 3 minutes instead of 4. Your call, Marcus. Webb thought about 200,000 people in the surrounding area. His daughter's school, 12 miles downwind. Do it. Elaine's car screeched into the facility at dangerous speeds. She ran into the control room and went straight to the auxiliary panel, fingers flying with muscle memory. 30 seconds. She counted down as alarms filled the room. 29. 28. The temperature gauge held at 2,143 degrees. Critical was 2,200. 15 seconds. The thermal bloom shuddered, then dispersed like water down a drain. It's working. Martinez shouted. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Reversing flow, now. The pumps groaned. Then coolant began flowing properly, and temperature dropped. 2,100 degrees. 2,050. 2,000. The control room erupted in cheers. Chen sobbed with relief. Martinez laughed into the phone with the NRC. Webb turned to Elaine. You saved us. You saved the whole city. Yeah, she said quietly, staring at monitors. Maybe. By evening, camera crews surrounded the facility. The story spread like wildfire. Retired hero saves city from nuclear disaster. The president issued a statement. Someone created a Wikipedia page. A week later, the facility held a ceremony. Webb stood at a podium with the reactor dome visible behind him, addressing reporters from 3 continents. Thanks to Ms. Hoffner's quick thinking and expertise, we averted what could have been the worst nuclear disaster in American history. The facility offered her a consulting position. 6 figures, her own office. The NRC wanted to add her reverse flow procedure to emergency protocols nationwide. Talk of medals, congressional hearings. Elaine smiled for cameras and said the right things. But her hands shook, and her eyes kept drifting to the reactor building. That night in her hotel room, she pulled out old notebooks. 30 years of observations, anomalies that never made sense. Something bothered her about how quickly the bubble had formed. About the timing. She started running numbers. The alarm started at 3:47 a.m., 13 days after the crisis. Webb's phone exploded with notifications. Urgent repeated 17 times. "What now?" he answered. "It's Chen. Get here. Now." The control room was chaos. Every operator at their stations. "Core temperature is rising," Chen said. 1,200 degrees and climbing, faster than before. "That's impossible. We fixed it. We made it worse." Elaine stood in the doorway in pajamas, face ashen. "Oh God, Marcus. We made it so much worse." Chen pulled up comparisons. Before the crisis, stable 600 degrees. After the fix, gradually rising to 800, then 900, now accelerating. Pressure readings erratic. Seals showing premature wear. "The reverse flow," Elaine said, walking slowly to the console. "When I collapse the bubble, the pressure spike must have." She pulled up schematics. "Look, junction B7. The reverse flow damaged the internal baffles, the pressure regulators. They are designed for one-way flow. When I reversed it, even for 30 seconds, they are like heart valves. Force blood backwards and you damage them. I did the same to the coolant system." "How bad?" Webb asked. Elaine pulled up projections. 7 to 2 hours until critical threshold. And this time, reversing won't help. It'll probably rupture the pipes completely. Shut it down. Emergency shutdown, right now. The control rods are responding sluggishly. The pressure changes affected their movement. We can shut down, but with the coolant system compromised. "We're fucked," Martinez said. Elaine sat heavily. "I should have seen this. You can't just reverse complex systems without consequences. I treated a symptom like it was the disease." By evening, news crews returned with a different tone. "Failed fix puts thousands at risk." Was Hoffner unqualified? At the press conference, a reporter asked, "Ms. Hoffner, do you take responsibility for making it worse?" "Yes," she said simply. "I solved the immediate crisis without understanding the underlying problem. That's on me." That night, Hoffner made it worse trended. Late-night comedians made jokes. A congressman called for investigation. In her hotel room, Elaine stared at her notebooks. Every instinct said run, disappear to her cabin. But something kept nagging at her about the original crisis, about how the bubble formed in the first place. She started going through maintenance logs, incident reports, anything she could access remotely. There was a pattern there. She was sure of it. Elaine didn't go to her cabin. She drove to the Westridge Public Library at opening. "I need the paper records. Anything about the facility from the last 40 years. The librarian's eyes widened. "You're Elaine Hoffner. I need those records." 6 hours later, surrounded by old newspapers, council minutes, safety audits, she found it. In 1987, a proposal to upgrade Reactor 7's coolant system. Concerns about long-term viability. The upgrade was rejected. Too expensive. Existing system working fine. But someone had scribbled in the margin, thermal expansion over 30 years could compromise baffle integrity in high-stress junctions. Recommend monitoring B7, C3, and D9. The initials, EH. Her own. She'd written that 37 years ago and forgotten. She checked maintenance logs. Junction B7 had been flagged for inspection 3 times in 5 years. Each time, postponed due to budget constraints. Low priority. No immediate concerns. C3 and D9, same story. She accessed current system status remotely. The temperature readings, pressure fluctuations, damage patterns, it wasn't random. It followed exactly what she'd predicted 37 years ago. The bubble hadn't been caused by the secondary system. It formed because the baffle in B7 was already failing, compromised by decades of thermal expansion. The system had been breaking down for months, maybe years. The crisis was just when it became visible. And when she'd reversed the flow, she'd accelerated the failure of C3 and D9. "I didn't solve the problem," she whispered. "I solved a symptom." The real problem was Reactor 7 operating 37 years with components designed for 30. Deferred maintenance, budget cuts, slow entropy. The bubble was a warning sign, and she'd treated the warning instead of the disease. She checked projections. 61 hours until critical threshold. But if C3 or D9 failed first, they could have as little as 24 hours. She drove to the facility. Security tried to stop her. "Tell Marcus I know what's really wrong. Tell him the reactor needs complete shutdown in the next 12 hours. Tell him if he doesn't listen, everyone within 50 miles needs to start driving." 10 minutes later, she was in the control room. "The original crisis was a symptom," she said, pulling up schematics. "The bubble formed because the baffle system was already failing. It's been failing for years." She showed them her 1987 notes. "I warned about this. 37 years ago, I said these junctions would fail. But it was expensive to fix, and everyone thought I was paranoid. So they didn't do anything." "What difference does it make?" Foster asked. "We still have to deal with the damage. The damage is going to spread. C3 and D9 will fail next. The whole coolant system is compromised. And we can't fix it while running, even at partial power. So we shut down," Martinez said. "Normal shutdown takes 18 hours. We have 61 hours until crisis. That gives us 43 hours to, what? Replace the entire system. That takes months." Elaine had been thinking about this during the drive. The answer was extreme, final, terrifying. "We don't fix it," she said quietly. "We decommission, shut down and entomb it. Seal the reactor, flood it with concrete. It's the only way to guarantee safety." The room went silent. "That's insane," Foster said. "This facility powers 500,000 people. The economic impact of a core breach is somewhat higher." Everyone's phones buzzed simultaneously. "Junction C3 is showing pressure irregularities," Chen said hollowly. "It's starting." The next 12 hours, conference calls, emergency meetings, desperate arguments. The governor wanted proof. The NRC wanted second opinions. Everyone wanted someone else to decide. Webb called a meeting at 2 a.m. Present, senior operators, NRC representatives, state emergency management, and Elaine. "All options," Webb said. The NRC representative suggested controlled replacement while maintaining minimal operation. 3 to 6 months. "During which we're operating a compromised reactor," Elaine said. Chen suggested normal shutdown and repairs. 18 months minimum. And we'd need parts that might not exist anymore. The state coordinator suggested evacuation. Clear 50 miles, work without population pressure. Evacuate 400,000 people for 2 years. Webb looked incredulous. Elaine spoke. "Emergency core isolation and permanent shutdown. We initiate controlled shutdown immediately. As temperature drops, we pump in specialized borate concrete. Create a sarcophagus, like Chernobyl but properly engineered from the start." "How long?" 48 hours to safe shutdown and begin entombment. Full encasement, another week. After that, the threat is over. And the facility is dead, Webb said. Is dead. Reactor 7 will never generate power again. Higher costs, possible blackouts, angry constituents. But everyone stays safe. The room erupted. The cost would be astronomical. The political fallout devastating. This was giving up. Elaine stood. I made this worse. I came in thinking I was a hero, that my experience made me the solution. I treated the symptom and ignored the disease. So now I'm asking you to trust me one more time, and I know I haven't earned it. But I've spent 3 days studying this reactor, and I'm telling you, this is the only way. She pulled up current displays. C3 degrading faster than predicted. D9 showing stress. Temperature curve steepening. We have maybe 36 hours before catastrophic failure. The shutdown I'm proposing takes 48 hours, which means we start right now, this moment. Every hour we delay increases the risk we lose control entirely. You're asking us to kill this reactor, Webb said. I'm asking you to bury it with honor instead of letting it kill us. The NRC representative ran numbers. The Borat cement will work. We've used it for smaller issues. Never this scale, but theoretically. What about the reverse flow procedure? Foster asked. The one for national protocols. Elaine smiled bitterly. Burn it. What I did was treat system fatigue as an isolated incident. I got lucky the pipes didn't rupture immediately. She pulled up a new document. Instead, I've drafted inspection protocols focusing on long-term thermal effects, cumulative stress analysis, component lifespan modeling. Things we should have been doing all along. If we do this, Webb said, we're admitting we failed. No, we're admitting complex systems have lifespans. That maintenance isn't optional. That sometimes the brave thing isn't finding a clever fix. It's accepting when something has reached the end of its useful life. She looked around at tired, frightened faces. I spent my career believing with enough knowledge I could fix anything. But I was wrong. Some things can't be fixed. They can only be contained. At 3:17 a.m., Webb authorized emergency decommissioning of Reactor 7. The operators moved with practiced efficiency. Chen initiated shutdown, pulling control rods with precision. Rodriguez coordinated with the power grid. Foster prepared for concrete encasement. Elaine worked alongside them, not as a hero but as another technician doing difficult work. Checking readings, verifying procedures, catching small errors. This wasn't glory. This was just work. By dawn, core temperature had dropped to 400 degrees and falling. Concrete pumps were positioned. The specialized mixture was prepared. How do you feel? Webb asked during a break, watching sunrise over the reactor dome. Old. Tired. Relieved, maybe. The governor is spinning this as a success. Controlled decommissioning prevents disaster. Better than the alternative. They want you to testify before Congress. Elaine shook her head. I'm not a hero. I'm the person who didn't fight hard enough 30 years ago. Who treated a symptom 2 weeks ago and made it worse. I got lucky we had time to do this properly. You saved the city. Twice. I recognized a problem I should have prevented. She looked at the reactor dome, soon to be hidden under concrete and steel. The hardest thing isn't fixing problems. It's admitting when something is broken beyond repair. Accepting that sometimes the answer is to stop, not keep going. What will you do now? Go back to my cabin. Fish. Read. Try to forget how fragile these systems are. She paused. And maybe write those protocols. If someone had listened 30 years ago, we wouldn't be here. Maybe if I write them properly now, someone will listen. 3 months later, Reactor 7 was fully entombed. The distinctive dome was now hidden behind protective material, a gray monument to assuming complex systems could run forever. The congressional hearing room was packed. Elaine sat at the witness table, hands folded, expression neutral. Senator Catherine Mills spoke first. Ms. Hoffner, you've become controversial in recent months. I've been called worse. Scattered laughter. Your testimony today focuses on aging nuclear infrastructure. Partially. I'm here to talk about failure. Mine, specifically. I spent 26 years at Westridge. I identified potential long-term risks. I wrote reports, made recommendations, calculated that critical junctions would fail after approximately 30 years. But I didn't fight hard enough. I let budget concerns and institutional inertia win. That's on me. She pulled out a thick document. This is my comprehensive report on what went wrong. My original 1987 notes, maintenance logs showing deferred inspections, technical analysis of why my fix accelerated failure, and recommendations for preventing this elsewhere. Another senator interrupted. Many people consider you a hero. Then many people are wrong. I misdiagnosed the problem. I treated a symptom. I made things worse. We got lucky we had time for a proper solution. Lucky isn't the same as competent. She looked at the cameras. I'm here to tell every engineer, every technician, every operator, when you see a problem, don't wait. Don't assume someone else will handle it. Don't let budget constraints or political pressure stop you from speaking up. Because systems fail. It's not if, it's when. And the only thing standing between safe operation and disaster is people willing to admit when something is broken. The hearing continued for 3 hours. When Senator Bradford accused her of fearmongering, she pulled out a list of 12 other reactors operating beyond designed lifespan with deferred maintenance. I'm not trying to shut down nuclear power. I'm trying to keep it from shutting itself down in the worst possible way. These facilities can operate safely for decades beyond design specs, but only if we invest properly. Only if we're honest about when components need replacement instead of pretending everything is fine until it catastrophically isn't. Senator Mills leaned forward. What would you say to families who lost access to affordable power? I would say I'm sorry. I'm sorry we let their reactor run 7 years beyond when major systems needed replacement. I'm sorry that budget cuts created a situation where decommissioning became the only safe option. And I'm sorry we live in a world where we'd rather risk catastrophe than spend money on maintenance. She paused. But I'm not sorry we shut it down. Because the alternative was burying families instead of a reactor. As she left the Capitol, a young woman approached wearing an engineer's lanyard from an Arizona facility. Ms. Hoffner, I've been documenting pressure anomalies for 6 months. Small things, nothing triggering alarms, but the pattern bothers me. My supervisor keeps saying it's fine. Elaine stopped. Show me. They sat on a bench. Elaine examined the data, seeing echoes of Westridge patterns. File a formal report. Document everything. Make noise they can't ignore. If they try, send it to the NRC. Send it to me. Send it to the press if necessary. Don't let them tell you it's fine when you know it isn't. The engineer nodded, tears forming. Everyone's been saying you failed. I did fail. I failed 30 years ago when I didn't fight hard enough. I failed 3 months ago when I treated symptoms. But maybe I'm failing less now. Maybe that's the best any of us can do. 6 months later, Elaine stood on her cabin deck watching sunset. Webb called. They approved the protocols. The NRC is implementing modified versions at every commercial reactor. Mandatory thermal stress analysis, component lifespan modeling, the whole package. Elaine closed her eyes. Good. They are creating a fund for infrastructure upgrades. 3 facilities have announced voluntary decommissioning rather than risk another Westridge. That's actually good, Marcus. There's something else. MIT wants to create a fellowship in your name. For students studying system failure analysis and long-term infrastructure safety. They want to use your Westridge case study as core curriculum. Elaine was quiet. They want to teach people about my failures. About learning from failure. About admitting mistakes. about the difference between fixing symptoms and solving problems, about having courage to say this needs to stop instead of I can fix this. After hanging up, Elaine thought about the strange arc of her life. She'd spent decades becoming the person everyone called when things went wrong, defined herself by fixing problems. Then she'd learned that sometimes the heroic thing was admitting you couldn't fix everything, that wisdom meant knowing when to stop, that the greatest expertise was recognizing the limits of your own knowledge. Her phone buzzed. Email from the Arizona engineer. Subject: they listened. Her facility had shut down for emergency inspection based on her reports. They'd found stress fractures in 3 coolant junctions, caught before catastrophic failure. Offline 6 months for repairs, costing millions, but reopening safely. Thank you for teaching me that being right is more important than being liked, the engineer wrote. That preventing disasters is better than surviving them. Elaine typed back, you saved people by speaking up. That's the real heroism. Not dramatic fixes, but boring vigilance. Not brilliant solutions, but humble honesty. Keep fighting for what's right, even when it's expensive and unpopular. Especially then. The reactor dome at Westridge remained, encased in concrete, a permanent reminder. Tourists took pictures. Schools brought students to learn about nuclear safety. The facility had become a teaching tool, a cautionary tale, a symbol of both failure and redemption. She thought about people who saw her as hero, as villain, and the few who understood she was neither, simply a person who'd made mistakes and done the hard work of making them right. Inside her cabin, old notebooks sat on shelves alongside new ones she'd been filling with observations, recommendations, warnings future engineers might need. She'd spent her career believing knowledge was power, that expertise meant having answers. Now she understood real wisdom was knowing which questions to ask. Like, is this really fixed, or just treating symptoms? What are long-term consequences? What am I not seeing? And most importantly, when should we stop trying to fix this and admit it's time to let it go? Those questions would save lives. Not brilliant solutions or dramatic interventions, but humble inquiry and courage to accept difficult truths. Chen called. Elaine, I'm starting a consulting firm. Safety audits for aging infrastructure. I want you to be a partner. Sarah, I'm retired. You're writing MIT curriculum. That's not retired, that's rebranding. I've got contracts with 4 utilities already. They are scared. Westridge scared them. But they don't want a young engineer saying everything's fine. They want the person who admitted she was wrong and fixed it properly. Elaine thought about her quiet cabin, her fishing trips, her plan for peaceful obscurity. Then about 12 other reactors beyond designed lifespan. About young engineers documenting ignored problems. About the inevitable next crisis. I'll do it. But one condition. Every report includes a section called What We Might Be Missing. Because the most dangerous thing in engineering is certainty. Deal. Elaine stood at her window, looking out at the dark lake. Somewhere out there, in power plants and infrastructure systems across the country, components were aging, stress accumulating, small failures compounding into future disasters. Now, instead of one tired engineer who'd learned painful lessons, there would be a team. Protocols. A fellowship training new engineers to ask hard questions. Consulting firms prioritizing safety over convenience. It wouldn't be enough. It would never be enough. Systems would still fail, disasters still happen, people still make the mistake of thinking they could fix anything. But maybe it would be less catastrophic next time. Maybe someone would catch problems earlier, speak up louder, insist on proper maintenance. Maybe someone would have the courage to say shut it down before emergency. That was worth coming out of retirement for. She called Webb. About that consulting firm. We're going to need access to every maintenance log, every deferred inspection, every budget cut that prioritized cost over safety. For every reactor in the country. That's a lot of data. That's the point. We're not waiting for the next crisis. We're finding problems before they find us. The utilities will hate you. They already do. Might as well earn it. She'd never be a hero. The news had documented every mistake, every misjudgment. But heroes were overrated. What the world needed wasn't heroes. It needed people willing to do boring, thankless work of preventing disasters instead of responding to them. It needed people who understood that sometimes the most important words were "I don't know" or "I was wrong" or "this needs to stop." It needed people measuring success not in dramatic saves but in quiet days when nothing went wrong because someone had been paying attention. Elaine Hoffner had been a hero for 1 week, a villain for the week after. Now she was something more useful, a person who had failed, learned, and was determined to help others fail less catastrophically. It wasn't the career she'd imagined, but it was the one she'd earned. And maybe, in the end, that was enough. The real work was just beginning.